It started like any other political segment until Jasmine Crockett's phone buzzed. The call came from Burkina Faso's president, Ibrahim Traoré, and what he told her, stopped the show, stopped the room, shattered everything she thought she knew about doing her job. The panel was midway through a debate on agricultural trade policy. Nothing unusual. Just another Friday morning on Daylight Politics, a syndicated current affairs show taped in Des Moines and broadcast nationwide. The air was thick with the usual political back and forth. Jasmine, seated second from the left, had just begun a point about subsidies in Iowa when she paused. Not a long pause, not at first, but enough for the room to notice. Across from her, Congressman Seth Ridge looked up from his notes. The host, Shelley Baird, shot a glance toward the control booth, then back at Jasmine. A 5-second pause on live television is an eternity. At 7 seconds, Shelley leaned in, mic hot. Congresswoman? Still nothing. Jasmine's eyes weren't on the panel anymore. They were fixed on her phone, face down on the desk, buzzing. Any other time, a personal call in the middle of a broadcast would be unthinkable. She'd never even have the phone on set, but something told her not to ignore it. She flipped the phone over. Her face drained of color. One hand hovered above it, hesitated, then grabbed it tight. Her lips moved soundlessly. Ibrahim, not said anyone, more like an instinct. And then she did what no one in that room, no politician anywhere, would ever do with millions watching. She answered, "Hello." Panic rippled through the control room. A producer cursed under his breath, gesturing wildly at Shelley through the glass. Cut to commercial, play B-roll, anything but dead air and a congresswoman on a private call. But Shelley didn't budge. She held up a hand to the tech. "Wait," she whispered. "Something's wrong." The camera stayed locked on Jasmine. Something about her posture changed in seconds. The straight-backed, sharp-edged politician softened. Her shoulders slumped, her back rounded. She looked smaller, exposed. You could tell the man on the other end wasn't talking about votes or polls. She didn't speak, just listened. 30 seconds crawled by, an eternity in broadcast time. Her hand drifted to her mouth. Her eyes blinked too fast. Then came the moment that would play on every news channel, every feed, every blog for days. A single tear slid down her cheek. Shelley leaned forward. "Congresswoman, we can step out if you need." Jasmine lifted her hand, palm out, not dismissive, "Just let me be." The faint sound of a man's voice filtered through the phone speaker. Calm, deliberate, heavy with something you didn't want to hear. Producers scrambled to cut to break. Too late. The camera caught it all. That frozen look, that tear, the way Jasmine whispered one word into the mic, just audible, "children." Nobody watching knew what to think. Twitter erupted. Was she sick? Did someone die? Was it a protest? A stunt? A meltdown? Someone in the booth zoomed on her phone before they cut away. The caller ID flashed. Ibrahim T. Within minutes, aide, reporters, and amateur sleuths pieced it together. Ibrahim Traoré, transitional president of Burkina Faso. He didn't just call U.S. politicians live on air. Not unless something terrible had happened. When they cut to commercial, the studio fell into stunned silence. The cameras were off, but Jasmine was still on the call, voice low. "Are you safe?" she asked, clutching the phone tighter. Gone was the poised public figure. She looked like someone who'd just been told the world split open and didn't know how to stand anymore. A producer stepped forward to intervene. Another gently pulled him back. They knew this wasn't performance. "I'm sorry to call like this." Ibrahim's voice came through, accent thick, tone steady but worn. "I didn't want you to hear from the news." Jasmine's eyes darted to the floor. "What happened?" A pause, the kind you take when you'd rather say anything else. "There was a bombing, a car bomb, near the school, by the health post." She clenched her jaw. "Deliberate? We don't know yet, but there were children, aid workers, American volunteers. We haven't recovered everyone." Jasmine's breath hitched. She leaned forward, elbow pressing into the desk, covering her mouth. Someone set a cup of water near her. She didn't notice. "How many dead?" Another long pause. No full count yet, but it's bad. "Jasmine." I'm not calling for a statement. I'm calling because you cared. You were the only one who asked about Kaya last month. The only one who even replied. She stood up, pacing the studio floor though they'd gone to break. We tried to get State to pay attention. Nobody wanted it on record. I know, Ibrahim said, voice heavy. They don't see us. They see headlines. Today there won't even be one. She stopped mid-stride. I'm going to say something on air. I don't care what they tell me. A sigh on the line. Be careful. They'll call you dramatic. Emotional blackmail. They always do when it's not about them. Let them, she said. Let them choke on it. She turned to a producer. Put me back on. Shelley looked at her from the panel. Are you sure? Jasmine didn't answer. She returned to her seat, placed the phone face down. The floor manager called. We're back in 60. When the red light blinked on, Jasmine didn't mention trade deals or apologies. She didn't ease the audience in. There's been an attack, she said, voice steady. Not here, not on U.S. soil. But it matters. Shelley turned to her, eyes wide. Do you want to explain? Jasmine nodded. I just spoke with President Ibrahim Traoré of Burkina Faso. A school in Kaya was bombed this morning. Children were killed. So were volunteer workers, including Americans. He called me before it hit the news because he knew I wouldn't look away. Her voice cracked but didn't break. I know some of you are wondering why this matters. I get it. It's not an election topic. It won't trend for more than an hour. But if you heard what I just heard, if you'd heard his voice, Shelley asked, was it terror group? Jasmine shook her head. We don't know yet. That's not the point. The point is people, children, died while we sat here debating who's bumping grain tariffs by 2%. The studio went silent. The crew outside had headsets pressed to their ears, waiting for the cut order from the network upstairs. But no one dared. And across living rooms, phones, and TV screens, people saw something they weren't used to, a politician dropping her polish, a public servant choosing raw truth over spin. Jasmine Crockett had no idea just how many people were watching. The network didn't cut her off. They didn't mute her mic or throw up a breaking news graphic. They just let the silence hang there after Jasmine's words. Uncertain what else to do, that silence, 30 seconds long, would go viral by itself because it wasn't empty. It was a kind of silence that made people feel what she felt, the kind that said more than any soundbite ever could. She sat there, staring right into the lens, her voice steady while her face trembled. The first tear came quietly, unexpected, not because she was overcome for the cameras, but because the weight of it all, the children, the bombing, the helplessness, had finally cracked through. One blink too long, then another. She didn't sob, didn't wail, but everyone watching could see how her whole body was fighting to stay whole. No one on the panel knew what to do. Seth Ridge looked down at his folded hands. The others dropped their eyes to the floor. Nobody interrupted. Not this time. I've been doing this job for 4 years, Jasmine said, trying to breathe through each word. I've seen people fake concern for the cameras. I've sat in rooms where we argue for hours about things we all know won't change. But this, she tapped the desk once. This is real. She looked at her hands, then back at the camera. They're gone. Those kids, they'll never grow up. Their families will never know if anyone outside their village even said their names. She pulled a folded tissue from her jacket pocket and dabbed under her eyes. Then she turned toward Shelley. Remember last month? That segment on international aid spending? I asked for 5 minutes to talk about education programs in West Africa. You said there wasn't time. Shelley's mouth opened, then closed. She looked small under the studio lights. Jasmine didn't wait for her to answer. I wasn't mad, Jasmine continued, voice softer now. I know how this works. But now, I'm sitting here wondering, if we'd given those 5 minutes, maybe someone watching would have made a call. Maybe that bombing wouldn't have happened. Maybe the world would have paid attention before kids had to die. Someone behind the camera sniffed. A floor tech wiped his eyes with a sleeve. Still live, still rolling. Jasmine leaned forward, her fingers pressed flat on the desk. People always ask, What makes a politician cry? It's not scandal. It's not bad press. It's realizing you had a chance to do something, and you didn't. It's realizing your silence came with a cost. She paused, letting that land. Then she looked straight down the lens, raw and unguarded. I know I'll get dragged for this. People will say it's emotional manipulation, that I'm putting on a show, but I don't care anymore. If you've ever lost someone and thought, if I'd spoken up sooner, then you know what I'm feeling right now. Her phone buzzed again, face down. This time, she didn't check it. Shelley, voice thin and careful, asked, "Do you want to stop the show?" "No." Jasmine said quietly, "Let's finish it." And somehow they did. They got through the next segment. Though no one would remember what it was about, Jasmine's voice steadied but stayed hoarse. The panelists tried to stick to the script, but every word felt empty. Outside the studio, something else was happening. The clip was already spreading like wildfire. Hashtags trended. Burkina Faso, Crockett call. Clips of her tearful moment went up within minutes. Some raw, some edited. Commentators from both sides jumped in. Supporters called it the most honest thing on TV in years. Critics mocked it as performative politics. Cable news ran it on loop, framing it like reality TV. But the views kept climbing. The clip crossed 1 million hits before the broadcast even ended. Jasmine didn't check her mentions. She didn't read the emails flooding in. When the cameras finally cut, she stayed in her chair for a long time, staring at nothing, the phone buzzing quietly beside her. But that call wouldn't be the last, and the story wasn't done. 3 weeks before the tears and trending hashtags, Jasmine Crockett had sat at a narrow cafe table on the second floor of a converted row house just off Capitol Hill. It was late, midnight. The street outside was mostly quiet, just the hum of the occasional bus. She stirred her coffee but didn't drink it. She wasn't there for coffee. She was waiting. A man in a dark coat stepped in without knocking. No security detail. No press trailing him. Just a slim leather folder under his arm. He scanned the empty room, saw her, and gave a single nod. Ibrahim Traoré was no stranger to late-night meetings. Since becoming interim president of Burkina Faso, he'd learned that the real work rarely happened on the House floor. It happened in places like this, over bitter coffee and whispered promises nobody could trace. Jasmine stood to shake his hand. "I thought you weren't going to come," she said. "I almost didn't," he replied, voice low but clear. "But then Kaya came up in your last committee hearing." She gestured for him to sit. Most people miss that. Most people don't read the footnotes of subcommittee transcripts. That made him smile, tired but genuine. He placed a folder between them and opened it carefully. These are verified reports from the north. Gorsi, Jibo, Kaya, rural communities. Most of the violence never makes the news. No stringers left there. But what's happening is brutal and it's organized. Jasmine flipped through grainy photos. Schools with caved-in roofs. Burned medical tents. Names of missing children scratched in chalk on concrete. "We're watching a generation disappear," he said quietly. She looked up. "Why bring this to me?" "I asked 3 other members of Congress. They were polite, said they'd look into it." He shrugged. "You call me back." She leaned back in her chair, suddenly exhausted. "I'm just a freshman on a subcommittee. I don't even have a chair title." "You don't need a title to care," he said. He meant it. She could feel it. Not flattery, but a kind of respect that cut through the D.C. theater. They talked for hours about missing aid, local teachers forming neighborhood militias, a former classmate of Ibrahim's killed while trying to evacuate a school near Kaya. Jasmine listened, took notes, asked questions. By 2:30 a.m., she put her pen down. "What's the end game?" Ibrahim let out a breath, leaning his elbows on the table. "I don't have one yet. I need visibility. I need Americans to care long enough for someone to help. I thought, maybe you could start something, even if it's just a conversation." She stared out the window at the empty street. "You ever feel like the world only cares when the bodies are American?" "All the time," he said softly. She nodded. "Then I guess we'll just have to make people uncomfortable." In the weeks that followed, she tried. Quietly at first, she slipped Burkina Faso into interviews, mentioned it in floor speeches no one covered. She pitched a segment to Daylight Politics about humanitarian blind spots. The producer declined. Not enough domestic interest. Maybe after the election cycle. So she waited. She watched. She kept in touch with Ibrahim through secure calls and encrypted texts. Updates that made her stomach twist tighter every time. And when her phone buzzed that Friday morning in Des Moines, she didn't need to see the caller ID. She knew it wasn't just a phone call. It was the sound of a promise cracking. The moment on live TV when the tears fell wasn't for show. It was a weight of knowing she'd had information, time, a chance, and it still wasn't enough. But now the world had seen her, and she couldn't take that back. By Saturday morning, less than 24 hours after a breakdown on national television, the clip had spread like spilled ink, from political corners of Twitter to beauty influencers' Instagram stories, then onto cable news, then everywhere. And Jasmine? She stayed offline. She didn't open her mentions or watch the spin. She just sat with the knowledge that the call wouldn't be the last, and the story was far from over. Panels and Reddit threads popped up overnight. Titles like, "Was this real or just a PR stunt?" Some people praise her instantly. "That's what it means to care," one comment read. She showed up for people the rest of the world forgot. Others weren't so kind. One viral tweet, posted by a conservative podcast host with a big following, read, "So now we cry about foreign conflicts on TV? This is theater. This is manipulation." It had over 90,000 likes by mid-morning. Then the memes came. Some tasteless, others just cruel. One clip froze the moment her tear fell, looping it with sarcastic piano music in the caption. Oscar-worthy. Jasmine saw none of it at first. Her staff did their best to shield her. Her phone stayed on silent, her inbox untouched for the first time in years. But by late Saturday, she couldn't avoid it any longer. Her chief of staff, Priya, knocked once and stepped into Jasmine's hotel room, arms full of printed screenshots. Thought you should see the headlines before someone reads them to you on a panel. Priya said softly. Jasmine was sitting cross-legged on the bed. She took the stack, flipped through them. Jasmine Crockett breaks down on live TV. Authentic or orchestrated. Congresswoman's emotional outburst sparks debate about what's real in politics. Why Burkina Faso? Why now? And the one that hit harder than the rest. DC insiders. Crockett's Kaya moment may signal rebranding strategy. She let the pages drop onto the blanket. I didn't plan any of this, she muttered. I know, Priya said, but the world doesn't. That afternoon, Jasmine finally turned her phone back on for the first time in nearly 24 hours. Her screen lit up thousands of notifications. Messages from strangers, some kind, some confused, some dripping with venom. Colleagues she hadn't spoken to in months were suddenly texting. But one message stood out, a text from Ibrahim. I hope you're okay. If not, say so. I'll understand. She typed back, not okay, but I'm here. A minute later, his reply buzzed through. They're talking about you here too, but they're grateful. They keep saying at least someone cried. That stopped her cold. She scrolled away from the noise and pulled up the original clip CNN had posted. The clean feed. No dramatic cuts, no pundits shouting. Just her staring into a camera, hearing about dead children, and breaking in real time. She watched the whole thing. It was worse than she remembered. Not because she looked weak, but because she looked like someone she didn't recognize. No filter. No talking points. Just raw grief that slipped through before she could shove it back down. She shut the app and looked at Priya. I need to say something. An official statement? Priya asked. No, not that. Jasmine's voice was firm. A post. My words. Just me? Priya hesitated. Are you sure? There's already 100 different takes. Anything you say now becomes a weapon. Exactly, Jasmine said. So I'm going to use my own words first. She grabbed a legal pad from the bedside table, scribbled in big, looping letters for 20 minutes. Then she opened her phone and typed it out line for line. I didn't plan to cry on national television. I didn't plan to answer a call during a broadcast. But when you hear that a school was bombed and children are dead, something you breaks, or it should. If it didn't affect you, I worry about your humanity. If it did, and you stayed silent, I hope you ask yourself why. Burkina Faso may feel far away, but grief doesn't need a passport to matter. I won't apologize for caring. I only wish I'd done more before it was too late. You can mock the moment. You can meme it. But I'd rather be mocked for feeling something than praised for staying silent. She hit post, and for the first time since that call, the knot in her chest eased, just a fraction. But while the internet debated, another idea had begun to take root, an idea that might turn grief into something real. By Monday morning, Jasmine Crockett was standing on a makeshift stage in Cedar Rapids, Iowa, not for a campaign rally or a photo op, but in a community rec center gym with about 80 people sitting on folding chairs. No press wall, no fancy lighting. Just her, a squeaky microphone, and a mural of local kids playing basketball behind her. She held a small stack of notes she barely looked at. 3 days ago, she began, I took a phone call I didn't expect, and I responded in a way I couldn't control. She scanned the room. Older folks, a few college kids in the back, a retired school teacher sitting up front. One woman had brought her grandson, who was fidgeting with his juice box. You've all seen the clip? She said. You saw me lose my composure. Some of you thought it was powerful. Some of you thought it was embarrassing. Some of you weren't sure what to think. I'm not here to argue with any of that. She set the notes down on the podium. I'm here because I need you to understand why I didn't stay quiet. She told him everything. The late night in D.C., the folder with grim photos, the first time she read the names of the missing children, the encrypted calls with Ibrahim, the bombing, the little girl named Biba, the one with the neat braids who never made it to the hospital. They weren't American children, she said, but they were still children. Somewhere along the way, we convince ourselves that compassion should come with a border, that grief only counts when it looks like us, sounds like us, lives where we live. No one shifted. No one checked their phones. They just listened. I'm not asking you to be activists, she said, voice low now. I'm not asking you to become foreign policy experts overnight. I'm just asking you to feel something. She paused, not for effect, but because her throat was tight. When I was growing up, my mother used to say, if you feel nothing when you see suffering, you're not safe. You're lost. When I took that call, I felt lost. Not because I didn't care, but because I realized caring wasn't enough anymore. A man near the back raised his hand, surprising her. She squinted in the stage lights. Go ahead, she said. He stood, blue flannel shirt, gray beard, a little unsteady. My name's Elvin. I don't know much about Burkina Faso. Never even heard of Kaya before Friday. But I watched you on TV. And you reminded me of my daughter. She's a nurse. She called me crying during the first COVID wave. Same look in her eyes, like the world got too heavy. She kept saying, they didn't have to die, Dad. Some of them didn't have to die. I didn't know what to say then either, but I told her, if you still feel it, that means you ain't numb. And that's something. The room fell silent again. Jasmine blinked back fresh tears. That's why I'm here, she said softly. Because I still feel it. Because maybe if enough of us stay unnumb, we can actually change something before the next Biba dies. After the speech, she didn't rush out the back. She stayed, answered every question, even the hard ones. Why should we care when kids suffer here too? A woman asked. Jasmine didn't flinch. I don't think compassion works on a budget, she said. Caring about children in Kaya doesn't mean caring less about children in Cedar Rapids. It just means I believe both lives are worth something. When she finally left, there was no fancy motorcade, just her walking toward a borrowed van, staff trailing behind. Priya opened the door, then turned to her. You know what you just did, right? What? Jasmine asked, rubbing her eyes. You turned a mess into a movement. Jasmine gave a tired laugh. Not joyful, more like someone bracing for what came next. I'm not trying to lead a movement. Doesn't matter, Priya said, a small smile tugging at her mouth. You already did. But behind the scenes, she and Ibrahim were already planning something bigger. And this time, it wouldn't come with a warning.